Thank you for joining our webinar, Driving a Culture of Innovation at HSS. Our speaker is Doug Leach, Managing Director, Device Innovation at HSS Innovation Institute. Prior to HSS, Doug spent more than 25 years in the orthopedic device industry, working across R&D, product marketing, and business management functions. Our webinar sponsor is STERIS. Through a global network of facilities, STERIS Applied Sterilization Technologies provides contract sterilization using radiation and gas technologies, as well as technical support and laboratory services to companies in the orthopedic device market. Doug, thank you for speaking today.
Thank you, Caroline. It's good to see you. And I would, first of all, like to sincerely thank all the folks at OMTech for the invitation to talk about our experiences with innovation at HSS, as well as thanking STERIS for their kind sponsorship of these important events. When Caroline asked me to participate in this series of talks, I was very flattered, but I was flattered to be able to talk about the innovation culture that we have at HSS. However, I really wanted to do so in a way that would be useful to the OMTech audience. So to that end, I wanted to briefly introduce HSS and the HSS Innovation Institute, and then get into how we drive and foster a culture of innovation at HSS. After that, I'd like to provide some thoughts on why a culture of innovation at HSS might be important to the OMTech audience. And then maybe end with a few thoughts on some of those technologies that we're seeing at HSS as being important for the future of musculoskeletal care. So while HSS may be the center of my universe, I recognize that it might require a bit of a brief introduction. The Hospital for Special Surgery is a dedicated musculoskeletal healthcare provider. We're headquartered in New York City on the Upper East Side. We've got satellite sites around what we call the tri-state area of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. The hospital was founded in 1863, and it has remained since then an academic center that is solely focused on orthopedics. We do nearly 35,000 surgeries annually. More knee replacements and hip surgeries than any other U.S. provider, and over the last 11 years have been ranked #1 in orthopedics by U.S. News and World Report. And just this past January, I believe, we were rated as a world's best hospital for orthopedics by Newsweek. So my intent in mentioning these points is not driven by vanity, but more to underscore the level of expertise that we've achieved that really helps us drive our mission of patient care. And that mission, as you see on the screen here, is particularly important to us because we are a dedicated orthopedic center. I will come back in a little bit to how this mission actually plays into our innovation process later. But for a second, I'd like to talk about innovation at HSS as it has been over these 160 some odd years or so. This is not a new capability or a new interest to us. We've always embraced the innovative spirit, and there are a number of examples that are now on the market of contributions that HSS made to the orthopedic industry. Probably the most well-known particular example is the development of the Insall-Burstein posterior stabilized knee system, which even to this day really serves as a foundation for all of today's modern day knee replacements that are on the market. And that was developed in our own Department of Biomechanics here in New York. So while innovation was always part of our DNA at HSS, and it always will be, the process around capturing that innovation was not always ideal. It was not something that was terribly smooth for our inventors. And about 5 or 6 years ago, we recognized that HSS was certainly a gold mine of innovation potential, but we were really working within an underdeveloped innovation infrastructure. And one of our most valuable resources, our surgeons, were taking their ideas and creations outside of HSS to pursue. So we decided that we really needed to create a better way to harness and retain this innovative spirit and really build on it from there. So in 2016, we established the Innovation Institute. And the mission for the Institute itself was really there to foster and encourage the active pursuit of innovation. As I said earlier, to provide a sound infrastructure for innovation to actually take place within the hospital, provide a means of capturing that innovation and also keeping the intellectual property. You know, we want to retain those great ideas for ourselves so that we can continue to add value to them. And really to repatriate our surgeon inventors. Now, the objective was not to prevent our surgeons from working with industry. That's been a very successful model over time, and I think it will be for years to come. But what we wanted to do was encourage them to present their ideas when they do go to industry as being supported by the broader HSS ecosystem, and therefore adding much more value to the ideas that they already had. And the final point about our mission is also to provide a mechanism and potentially a pathway towards commercialization for any of these ideas that get that far down the road. The only comment that I'll make about our structure is that we work across three functional areas: care delivery, which is really captures all the digital aspects of delivering healthcare, which has grown in leaps and bounds over the last couple of years; medical devices; and life sciences. And we work both internally with HSS-based inventors, and we very much work with external inventors who want to partner with HSS to either improve on their current inventions or provide some additional resources for them to move their ideas forward. So with the foundation of the Innovation Institute, we were able to much more deliberately begin developing an innovation culture across the organization. The good thing is we had a great foundation to start from. And that culture is really supported by 6 anchoring points, probably the most important of which is organizational commitment. The commitment that we have behind innovation across the organization extends across every department, across every service line, and across every function. It is recognized and prioritized and encouraged at every administrative, clinical, and scientific level across the institution. It is baked into our strategic roadmap, and we have a deliverable of innovation within that roadmap. That roadmap is really our guide for the next 5 or 6 years as to the path that we want to follow, and innovation holds a very solid spot on that roadmap. The mission of patient care that I mentioned earlier, and the recognition that we've received by default of delivering, that excellent level of patient care, means that you have to embrace innovation and collaboration. We would not be able to deliver such a level of patient care and outcomes as we have been without being innovative and collaborative here within HSS. And what all of that does for us is introduces this interesting concept of a double bottom line. And this is a metric that we have in place that we hold ourselves accountable to, for instance, whenever we take on a new innovation project. And that double bottom line is both a financial measure, which any good business would do, but it's also a mission-driven measure. What we work on and what we do has to push the science and the clinical care of orthopedics forward, regardless of how financially sound it might be. That's a very important metric to us. So with that organizational commitment behind us, let me talk a little bit more about some of the other key drivers of our culture. So the ability to innovate requires resources, regardless of which sort of an organization that you're in. Having those resources to leverage is a great enabler for innovation. And we encourage our inventors to make use of all of the tremendous resources that we have here at HSS to add more value to their ideas. Our clinical, technical, and scientific resources are significant drivers of innovation. But I would also highlight that our operational, our digital, and our brand resources have become great value adds to many of the projects that we work on, and are things that we're beginning to leverage more and more, and the people that we work with outside of HSS recognize the value of it and want to actually take part in. We actively engage our colleagues throughout the organization to share their ideas with us. They are observing things that we within the Innovation Institute don't see all the time, but they're seeing it every day. We have innovation baked into our new employee orientation process. So we really make a point to engage them early on, and they know who to call and they know the process that they have to follow to help bring their ideas to light. We have a number of advisory councils that we work with both internally within the hospital as well as externally, not only to provide input as to the programs that we're working on, but also to get advice from them, either from the business side, the technical side, or even from the administrative side. And we have set up a number of innovation committees within our service lines to stay attuned to their needs and their observations. And for us, a service line would be, for instance, the spine service, or the sports medicine service, or the joint replacement service. These are very important organizations that really drive the business of the hospital forward. So we have created these specific committees that sit within those services, and we've got a very active pipeline of communication and ideas that just continues to build on itself. Process is always important, and process is particularly important when you have a lot of ideas and you need to get through them quickly and efficiently, but also so that you protect yourself and you do the right things from a business perspective when it comes to these ideas. And we've developed a number of robust processes that our inventors know that they can count on. We have a very strong process for intellectual property protection. We go through probably a very recognizable business diligence process for all of these projects, things that would be recognizable certainly to the OMTech audience. And being a hospital in the United States these days, certainly legal diligence and the diligence around compliance is very, very important, and has to be at the foundation of moving a project forward. The relationships piece of our culture is something that we've worked really hard on for the last few years, developing, fostering, and really trying to improve and grow. And those relationships turn out to be more resources that we can pull from to drive that culture. And those resources turn out to either be internal, the folks that we have to pull on a day-to-day basis to help us move a project forward, legal, finance, research, operations. They are our partners, and they have to be as engaged as we are in terms of moving these forward. But even more importantly, would certainly be the external resources that we have access to. Obviously, we've developed great relationships with the industry. As Carolyn mentioned earlier, I came from the industry, and I'm able to leverage those friendships and those relationships moving forward. We've got great academic relationships that we can pull on. We've got quite a number of contractors that has been a new thing for us and a lot of fun, because working with external engineering contractors, manufacturers, regulatory consultants has really enabled us to move our projects much, much further down the product development pathway than we used to. And it never hurts to have a great relationship with the FDA, and considering who HSS is, they certainly are very appreciative of the role that we play with them. And finally, it's really the point of creativity, or the anchor of creativity. Because we've got such a diverse set of skills here at HSS, and we get to work with all of them, we've developed a very strong sense of creativity, whether that is around just simple problem solving, bringing more people with different ways of thinking about the problem always makes for a much better solution, as well as something that we're actually particularly proud of, how you structure commercial deals. This is perhaps a specific example, but we're not afraid to try new things or to do things differently. The types of deals that we've grown accustomed to over the years that have worked out really well, such as license and royalty type deals, are great. But we're doing much more in terms of sweat equity deals, and are really looking at each one of our projects as being unique in and of itself. So we will apply a very creative approach to every one of those, so it works for everybody who's involved. So as proud as we are, and as proud as I am about the innovation culture that we've developed at HSS, why is this important to you? Why is this important to the OMTech audience? And I guess what I'd say is more and more what we're seeing is that industry is really looking for innovations that go beyond just a single solution, a single widget or a single app. And they're looking for a solution platform. And that platform really needs to impact the process of care for a patient, maybe going much further beyond just one point of care for that patient. I would say that while the traditional model of industry engaging with individual surgeons has worked very well in the past and has gained many insights and many new inventions for us, with a greater emphasis on solution platforms and looking across the care process, I would suggest that engaging with providers, meaning hospital systems, will significantly add to your ability to find these solutions and at the same time leverage a very sophisticated resource. And I'll point to the continuum of care, which has become a bit of a buzzword within the industry, but it's something that the provider side that we live on a day-to-day basis. We are involved in the entire process of giving care to that patient. We see everything that goes on there, and we're managing that process on a day-to-day basis, and there's value in that management. Our breadth of expertise, I mentioned much of that earlier, is enormous, from clinical, operational, administrative, financial. It's a breadth of expertise that can really help give the industry a much more intimate understanding of how the healthcare system works. We are on the front lines of delivering care. The point of care is very important in terms of how it's actually delivered. And we are getting direct insights every minute, every hour, every day into the clinical procedures, the operational flow, the reimbursement strategies, and we're collecting data. We have tons of data, and we're now leveraging much of that data, obviously for ourselves and for our own operational efficiencies and so on. But that data could be of value to the rest of the musculoskeletal industry. And I would argue that more providers are really raising their innovation game. It is a developing resource that probably wasn't as obvious maybe 10, 12 years ago. And that resource could provide a great new resource for the OMTech audience to meet the growing needs of patient solutions moving into the future. So before I conclude, I wanted to just take a minute and mention some of the critical technologies that we at HSS are starting to see bubble up and become very, very important for us, not only in the near future, but probably in the long future. The first and foremost is the world of just data and data analytics. this has really become apparent over the last couple of years. I think as electronic medical records have become the norm, as we're getting better and better at collecting data, we're using those assets to make our care processes more efficient, to work a patient through the system more efficiently, less painfully, and less clumsily as well, and integrate those care processes so that it becomes one seamless experience for the actual patient. The delivery of care, you could argue, over the last 12 months has changed significantly, especially with the advent of COVID. Speaking for HSS, the world of telehealth almost overnight went from an interesting little app that you have on your phone for the physicians to the significantly major portion of how we actually do our business. And we were pushed into that with COVID, but it was probably the best thing that ever could have happened. Telehealth not only was important for us to stay in operation during COVID, even now that we're back to almost normal, it is something that we continue to leverage, continue to expand our business with, and continue to improve. The world of ambulatory surgery centers, or ASCs, has been a growing factor for the last number of years, and it's still a growing factor for HSS. We believe that ASCs are a very important element to deliver care, and I know that the industry is also working on tailoring its offerings to work within the ASC environment, which is not a normal hospital environment. And those environments are going to become more and more important. Point of care design and point of care manufacturing is something that we're actually starting to see bubble up a little bit more. You may have seen recently a press release where HSS and Lima Corporate have just created, in fact, we just celebrated our grand opening of a 3D printing studio in one of our buildings in the Upper East Side. We're very pleased with that, but one of the key drivers behind that was our use of patient-specific implants, and not just the traditional off-the-shelf type of implants, but highly, highly complex implants, is actually growing because we're gaining a much greater capability in terms of addressing complex joint reconstruction. So those numbers are growing, and we needed to find a way to serve our patients so that period of currently waiting for months for some of these implants can be reduced in some instances down to weeks. And that's been because we've been able to partner with Lima and their expertise in 3D printing, but also the proximity helps tremendously. We can walk downstairs and have a conference with the engineers and get the devices made there. I've seen at UC San Francisco, where they're also making simple but important patient-specific trauma devices. So this is something that we think is going to continue to pick up momentum. Predictive modeling is actually a core competency that we have at HSS, and we're starting to really build on that, leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning, and combining that with sensors, as well as leveraging all of that within our own research components. We've got the motion analysis lab here, which is helping us tie the output from sensors with the motion that the patients are experiencing, and tie that also with imaging that those patients may have, to come up with an overall model that may provide a clinical guide or a clinical pathway for the physician for that particular for that particular patient. That's very exciting to us. Clearly, life sciences and continues to be a core competency here at HSS. We're doing a lot of work around regenerative medicine. We see that in terms of addressing cartilage regeneration, soft tissue regeneration, as being one of those critical technologies that we want to stay at the forefront of. We've got a very significant rheumatology practice here, and we continue to look at the therapeutics and diagnostics and pharmaceuticals that could assist there, as well as finding more and more ways of managing infection within total joints. Periprosthetic joint infection is still a big problem, and will be for quite some time until we start paying more attention to it. Considering all of the really cool technologies that I just discussed here, the one thing that we work hard to do at HSS is not forget the fundamentals of musculoskeletal care. That includes continuing to improve on devices. That includes continuing to improve on procedures for these devices, looking at treatments for joints that still really don't have any solutions, driving a better economic model, driving more value into these procedures. Those are the fundamentals that have always been important. They're important today, and they will be important for us moving forward. So with that, I wanted to once again thank OMTech and Steris and Carolyn for the invite to be here. This, as you can tell, is something that is very special and very passionate for me. If any of the OMTech audience have any questions about what I just reviewed, if you'd like to understand a little bit more about how we go about innovation at HSS, or understand why providers could or should be more of a prevalent part of your thought process, please reach out to me. You see my email here, or check out our website for the Innovation Institute, as you see on the screen here. Thank you, and thank you, Carolyn.
Doug, thank you so much for sharing with us how HSS is innovating. To talk a little more about culture and technology specifically, can you talk about the double bottom line concept that you mentioned?
Thanks for the question, Carolyn. This is one of my favorite topics. Having grown up in industry, I'm very familiar with a bottom line. But typically the bottom line is a financial measure. We use the term double bottom line, as I mentioned earlier, because of the level of importance that we put certainly on the business side of what we do from an innovation perspective. We want to create inventions or work with external inventors who have inventions that are, let's face it, are going to provide a financial benefit to everybody at the end of the day. So we certainly know how to do that bottom line, but the other bottom line is really our bottom line of delivering on our mission. And that is as important as the financial bottom line. And there are instances that I could probably point to where maybe the financial bottom line wasn't looking so great, but because it fulfilled or really knocked out of the park the mission bottom line of improving patient care, of solving clinical issues, we've gone ahead and we worked on them. And it's because we had this double bottom line to try to be true to. And as someone who grew up in industry, having that additional touch where you can really have a metric that's driving towards patient care and patient satisfaction is very satisfying to me in and of itself.
What are some of the untapped resources our audience should keep in mind when they're thinking of working with providers?
Yeah, another good question. And this is something that may not be obvious to my industry colleagues, and it might differ from one institution to the next. I'll give you a couple of examples. Here at HSS, being a New York City-based hospital on the Upper East Side, as you can imagine, space is at a premium. And, our operating rooms are packed with stuff. Our inventory rooms are packed with stuff. And the process by which we move our patients through the hospital has to be really well mapped out and very efficiently thought through. So we actually have a resource here called the Operational Excellence Team. This is a department of, it's a group of industrial engineers and data scientists. And it's fantastic because their remit for the institution is to really drive operational efficiency within the institution. So they combine those two very interesting complementary skill sets to come together and work to make HSS work really well. But that's a resource that could be leveraged for pretty much any other provider that's out there, and for any industry partner that may be working on a new procedure or a new clinical indication, or looking at ways that it can improve overall operating room flow with their current systems. This is a resource that could absolutely be tapped, and we can give you lots of examples of what's worked well for us and a lot of things that have not worked well, and things that would certainly help drive that. Another resource would be our value team. You know, this is a group of economists, of physicians, and of researchers that have come together to look again at the operation of the hospital, and look at it from an overall value perspective, so we know which levers to pull in terms of driving more focus on reimbursement, more focus on either cost cutting or cost spending, and really looking to squeeze as much value out of the process of care that we deliver for our patients and really for the overall healthcare economy.
To switch to the topic of technology, I know that surgeons are bringing you ideas, industries bringing you ideas. How do you decide what to work on? How does the Innovation Institute decide what to work on?
Yeah. Our process for deciding on those things to work on is not that much different than what you would see at an orthopedic company or any other industry partner. We certainly, as I mentioned earlier, we have our own financial metrics that we need to look at. We have our resource metrics. We need to determine what it is that we're capable of working on. We have our mission metric that I mentioned before. And what's helpful for us is we are a dedicated orthopedic shop. I don't think you'll see us working on a cardiovascular device anytime soon. That being said, we go through a very deliberate decision process, and we have quite a number of advisors that we work with that ultimately will give us insights to help us decide how we prioritize one thing over another. And once we make a decision, we move forward with it.
One of your last slides had a list of numerous technologies. You mentioned data and AI, the shift to ASCs. Which of these technologies do you think will be adopted in the near term, and which ones will take longer to adopt?
So the technology that we're very strongly adopting now, and I think we're seeing this as a common thread throughout the provider space, is really getting our arms around the data analytics piece. Every hospital has a ton of data, even just within its own EMR system. We're learning very quickly now with tools that are at our disposal now as well, how to leverage that data, really how to slice or dice it so that it provides a meaningful output to us to help us make decisions. And we're actually doing that now. And there are lots of companies that are out there who are learning how to do so. I think you'll start to see more and more traction with that over the next year or two. On the longer term side of things, what's really got us excited is the whole predictive modeling piece. The world of sensors is exploding. The world of motion analysis is exploding. The world of imaging has always been a very significant technology, but even that's beginning to advance further and further and get better and better. You're seeing, for instance, CT scanners and MRI scanners these days that can eliminate the metal artifact from a patient who might have an implant to the point where it's almost not even a problem. So we're starting to stitch all of that information together and come up with a potentially almost like a digital twin of a patient that you can provide initial inputs that would be gained from simple motion exercises, leveraging sensors preoperatively, collecting other symptoms of the patient, putting that into a predictive model that could then guide how the how the surgeon positions an implant intraoperatively and guide the rehabilitation of the patient downstream. That's something that's very exciting to us and we think has a huge amount of promise moving forward.
Yeah, it certainly does sound exciting. And to follow up on another comment you made, you had mentioned that, of course, you just opened the additive manufacturing studio in the collaboration that you're working on with Lima. Just to talk a little bit about on-site manufacturing, certainly societies are looking at this, FDA is looking at this. Why are hospitals considering on-site manufacturing lately?
Yeah. I think, as I may have mentioned earlier, a lot of it has to do with there's a lot of value of the proximity of the technology to the point of care itself. And for HSS, that was one of the key drivers. We are doing more and more highly complex joint replacements or joint reconstructions that require highly complex implant systems that you can only get through a custom route through any of the current companies. And that route is partially because of regulatory challenges, partially because of design challenges, but also partially because of geographic challenges. That's a very long time for a patient to wait for an implant. We're trying to reduce that wait time for the patients. And with our partnership that we had with Lima and the expertise that they have in 3D printing, we saw a lot of value of trying to bring that technology on site, whereby our surgeons can now literally walk a block and a half and meet with the engineers from the studio, can talk through their clinical needs, can work with the HSS Department of Biomechanics and the development engineers that are there, partner to come up with the best solution for the patient, and then go ahead and actually fabricate that implant on site. And if there are issues, they can respond to them quickly. So the idea in this case for us was to take something that is becoming more and more prevalent in our practice because we're getting better and better at these complex joint reconstructions, and try to cut the timeline down somewhat, as well as increase the quality of what we get and the likelihood that we're going to get it right the first time. I have contacts at UC San Francisco who are integrating 3D printing into their hospital for use in trauma cases. And in this instance, they're using it both as a bone modeling resource as well as a simple implant resource for the same exact reasons that I said. So I think we're going to see more and more hospitals doing this. 3D printing is becoming better and better, easier and easier. What has to catch up are going to be the regulatory requirements, but that's where we can come in and help provide some of our experience to the FDA. And I think you'll start to see more and more of this happening across the country.
Which technology of the future excites you the most?
I'll go back to my answer earlier. I may have given away the secret, but for me, it's this predictive modeling thing, because we're able to leverage so many of the skill sets that we have here at HSS and I think the right term is to stitch together a solution that becomes almost a prediction that within certain ranges of reliability can really help drive better care for the patients. And it's leveraging everything that we do here. And I'm excited about it because I grew up in a world where I developed implants. I also worked where I developed sensors. I'm also talking to our motion analysis colleagues here at HSS and how we include those inputs into that data. And now it's a matter of getting the software engineers and the data scientists together to help us figure out what sort of a model can we put together that would really help us create this predictive aspect and help make management of these joint diseases much better and much more predictable.
And one last question, since you just mentioned your time in industry, what have you learned about innovative cultures from your time at HSS that you wish you knew when you were leading teams in orthopedic device companies?
Yeah, I would say that the passion for innovation is the same. I've never worked anywhere where there wasn't an interest and a passion to do things differently, do things new, and solve problems. That's been the fun part of my career. I'd say the thing that I wish I knew when I was in industry that I now know while I'm here at HSS is what I mentioned in my talk earlier, which is there's a lot of capabilities that these providers have that when you leverage them as especially an industry partner, you can make the solution that you're going to create, or that you're trying to create, a much richer solution for yourself and for the patient population by leveraging all of these experiences that, at least when I was there, the industry either didn't have visibility to or didn't know how to leverage. And these experiences and these people and these amazing feats that they have achieved being part of a provider are things that the industry, and quite honestly, all of us, could really learn from and could move orthopedics along at a much quicker pace. And it's one of my encouragements to everybody to keep that in the back of your mind as you're planning your next project or thinking through the next market opportunity that you want to go after.
I think that's a great message to go out on. So thank you so much for your time today.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah. I also want to thank Steris for sponsoring this webinar, and would like to thank those of you who are watching. To learn more about innovation that is taking place in the orthopedic industry, you can continue to learn from our OMTech education series at omtechexpo.com.